A billion-dollar company on the brink of collapse, the CEO in total panic, top experts failing one by one. Then a 12-year-old boy, the janitor's son, steps up and says, "I can fix this." Everyone laughed at him. No one imagined he would save everything and expose the real villain behind it all. The Orbis Tech clock read 5:32 a.m. when Michael Harris swiped through the service turnstile, a battered backpack slung over his shoulders and a small cleaning cart trailing behind him. The lobby, grand, mirrored, lay silent, still wrapped in the dim pre-dawn light of New York City. His 12-year-old son, Bruno, walked beside him, quiet, watchful, as he always did on school rotation mornings. Orbis Tech was the beating heart of global innovation, a fortress of steel, glass, and binary code planted in the middle of Manhattan. Inside, decisions were made that rippled out to millions worldwide. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, banking infrastructures, digital security, all in the hands of brilliant engineers and billionaire executives. And of course the CEO, Andrew Coleman, the Brazilian who'd conquered the US with his ruthless business sense and futuristic vision. But that morning, something felt off. Even though nothing had happened, yet the air seemed heavier. The lights took longer to flick on. The East Tower elevator stuttered with odd glitches. Internal advertising screens kept rebooting for no reason. Bruno noticed it all. He said nothing. He just watched. While Michael straightened his grey uniform and started wiping down the reception glass, Bruno slipped away as usual. He climbed to the second floor, slipped behind an engineering wing column, and peered through a sliver in the wall. Screens brimming with charts, algorithms whizzing by like wind, buzzwords he jotted into a crumpled notebook in his pocket. This was his dream world, not the world of men in suits, but of machines and code and creation. Bruno could name almost every engineer. He knew who was the real deal and who was just playing a part. He also knew most of them barely glanced at his dad as they passed. Michael was invisible, just another service elevator, another floor to be mopped. And yet that day, invisibility was on the verge of becoming center stage. By 7:45 a.m., the lobby teemed with suit-and-tie execs, designers, security specialists, and MIT prodigies fresh out of graduation. Nobody noticed the kid in a grey hoodie by the coffee machine. Nobody noticed Michael, kneeling by a stubborn stain on the marble floor. On the 41st floor, tension was building. Andrew Coleman sat in his office, locked in a debate with 3 directors over a billion-dollar merger with a European firm. "If we don't close today, we'll miss our window. That window closes this week." He didn't know that in a matter of seconds, his window would be slammed shut for good. At 9:29 a.m., the main control panel at Orbis Tech blinked once. A second later, every screen went dark. All systems, internal, external, communications, security, servers, backups, froze. It wasn't an electrical blackout, it was digital. At 9:30 a.m., the halls descended into chaos. Black screens, false alarms, stuck automatic doors, dead phones. The security system locked down. Everyone ran. Engineers shouted commands into unresponsive laptops. Andrew stormed down the stairs, face drawn, demanding answers. "Someone tell me what's happening." Nathan Spencer, the CTO, arrived breathless, wearing a theatrically shocked expression. "Could be an external attack." "We don't know yet," he said, choosing his words carefully. Emergency teams were called. War rooms filled up. Investors started calling. International partners threatened to pull the plug on contracts. Everything was offline. Orbis Tech had stopped. Meanwhile, on the ground floor, Bruno watched. From afar, he saw engineers darting in and out of rooms with wide eyes, snippets of conversation catching his ear. "Firewall breach, no accessible backups, the logs are gone." He tugged at his dad's sleeve. "Dad," he whispered, "this isn't normal." "How do you mean?" Michael asked. "I heard what they're saying. There's no signature of an external attack. No security protocols activated. It looks like it came from inside. Michael's eyes widened. You think someone in the company did this? Bruno didn't answer right away. He stared up at the server core at the top of the building, mind racing. The way the system went dark, it was like someone flipped a switch, a button only an insider would know how to use. Michael swallowed hard. He knew his son was brilliant, but this was way beyond anything he'd ever imagined. Bruno turned back to the corridors. That's when he saw Nathan, the CTO, hustle into a room with 2 laptops under his arm and a look far too nervous for someone supposed to be solving the crisis. Bruno made a mental note of every detail, every pattern. While everyone else pored over security manuals, he saw what nobody else did. Because, as his father always said, the person who cleans the floor sees more than the one who simply walks on it. And there, at the heart of a crumbling billion-dollar empire, a small voice whispered what nobody dared to say out loud. This was sabotage. The day was ending, with the sky streaked orange behind Manhattan's skyscrapers. Deep underground at Orbis Tech, far from the gloss of the executive floors, Michael Harris lined up buckets, cloths, and cleaning supplies with the precision of a surgeon. Beside him, Bruno sorted wires and electronic components from a box left forgotten in the storage room. It was there, among cardboard boxes, dust, and busted monitors, that father and son were building more than a routine. They were building an invisible legacy. This is from an 8-core CPU, Bruno said, holding up a metal piece and smiling. But it's fried. The heat must have killed the transistors. Michael laughed, lost in the technical terms, but captivated by his son's passion. And where did you learn that, kiddo? From the manual Mr. Peter gave me, and that thick book security guard Bill found in the discard room. It was in English, but I translated it with the library's dictionary. Michael watched him with pride. No words were needed. It was that sparkle in Bruno's eyes that made Michael endure the ache in his back and the long hours of silence. Peter, the former Orbis programmer now retired, sometimes dropped by for a chat. A calm-spoken gentleman with grey hair and a kindness that reminded Michael of his grandparents back home. Peter saw in Bruno what few bothered to notice: pure intelligence, an insatiable hunger for knowledge, and a rare maturity. Your son is a little scientist, he once told Michael over coffee in the lobby. He shouldn't be sorting wires, he should be writing code. But Michael knew the world wasn't fair or fast. It took time, patience, and values. At home, he taught those values with simple gestures, how to share their little with neighbors, how to express gratitude even when they were overlooked, how to hold your head high when your uniform tells the world you're just the janitor. Never let the way people look at you define who you are, Bruno. What matters isn't the uniform, it's the heart you carry inside, he always repeated. Bruno absorbed every word, and he wrote them down in his mind. The next morning, before the sun rose, Michael and Bruno were back in the building. As his father refilled the cleaning carts, the boy took advantage of the quiet minutes to explore the electronics stash. He found an old monitor, heavy but intact. He plugged it in. The screen flickered, then stayed black. He smiled anyway. This screen still has a story to tell, he said to himself. Michael appeared behind him, lugging an industrial vacuum. Talking to the machines now? Maybe. One day they'll listen to me, Bruno replied seriously. Not as a janitor, as an engineer. I'll build things here, make all this better. Michael fell silent. He came close and put a hand on his son's shoulder. You'll get wherever you want. But when you get there, be the kind of person who listens to those who clean the floors. A man's worth is measured by how he respects the people others don't see. Bruno nodded, as if he understood something far bigger than the moment. On the second floor, while Michael wiped down the railings, he saw a group of engineers debating code out loud. They ignored him as always. even when Bruno approached with an Ethernet cable in hand. "Hey, sir," the boy said politely, "this cable doesn't support anything above 10 Gbps. It's an older model." The engineer glanced at him with thinly veiled contempt. "Go play with your broom, kid." Bruno lowered his eyes but said nothing. Michael saw it all, and it hurt more than any blow. Later, in the employee locker room, Michael peeled off his uniform while Bruno read an old manual on data security. His father watched him with tenderness and a twinge of sorrow. Such talent locked in a small body, with no badge to show for it. "You're bigger than this building, son," Michael said, sitting beside him. "But remember, the world will try to make you forget that." Bruno closed the book and looked into his father's eyes. "I won't forget, because you remind me every day." The silence that followed spoke volumes without a single word. At the end of their shift, before heading home, Bruno returned to the storage room. He powered up the old monitor again, knowing full well it wouldn't start. He touched the dark screen lightly, as if it were magic. And then, as if speaking to destiny, he whispered, "Dad, one day those machines will listen to me." Michael, standing at the door, said nothing, but his misty eyes said it all. Because in that moment, amid scraps of obsolete tech and the dust of the Empire's underbelly, a silent promise was born, that the invisible would one day become the hero. Monday dawned clear, and the pace in Manhattan was already frantic. At Orbis Tech, the atmosphere was even more intense. It was merger day. The billion-dollar deal with European firm Demandus Technologies would be sealed in just a few hours, and CEO Andrew Coleman couldn't afford a single mistake. At exactly 8 a.m., the corridors were humming, security feeds rolling, AI monitoring data streams, conference rooms reserved, coffee flowing to harried executives. Everything seemed under control, or at least it did. On the 37th floor, CTO Nathan Spencer stared at a cascade of code on his private screen. His office, usually spotless, glowed with an eerie blue tint. He took a steady breath. Every detail had been meticulously arranged. The virus payload, the timing, the hidden backdoors, the silence imposed on anyone who might notice through threats and promises. At the heart of the script, a single command blinked, awaiting its final trigger. Nathan pressed enter. As if launching an invisible missile, he stood, smoothed his suit, and left the room. At 9:30 a.m. on the dot, Orbis Tech went dark. Lights flickered out. Screens turned pitch black. Security doors slammed shut. Elevators halted between floors. The ventilation system went haywire. Backup failure alerts, network failure alerts, communications failures. Everything tripped. Andrew Coleman, mid-video call with the European board, saw his screen blink once, then go dead. The conference room AC froze, as if the company itself had stopped breathing. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. Every phone line was dead. Security tried to reach the tech floor. No response. Within 30 seconds, chaos had spread through all 47 stories of Orbis. Tens of millions in contracts were frozen. Internal servers were isolated. Cloud backups locked out. Even Athena, their support AI, was silenced. Nathan appeared in the command center, face tense but calm. Like a seasoned actor, he feigned concern as the top engineers swarmed around him like ants in a fire. "We've got cascading failures across all critical systems," one engineer reported. "External attack?" another asked. Nathan frowned. "Too early to say, but we need action. Pull the security logs, rebuild layered access, check the status of the global server architecture." Andrew arrived moments later, face drawn. "Spencer, tell me this is just a local glitch. Tell me we can fix it." Nathan paused for effect. "I believe so, but there are signs of deep compromise. The origin appears embedded in our core code. If that's true, we'll have to rebuild from scratch." Silence cut through the room. Andrew reeled. This will kill us. If the market finds out, if the shareholders find out. Nathan cut him off with a steady look. Maybe it's time to rethink our strategic leadership. Orbis needs a fresh start. The implication was clear. A subtle, steel-edged suggestion of replacement. Meanwhile, in the basement, Bruno watched it all. He'd been sent with his dad to help clean the control rooms now that the automated systems had failed. Amid the engineers in a panic, no one noticed the boy's keen eyes and still hands. He listened, he memorized, he observed. "Dad," he murmured, "they're looking at the wrong logs." "How do you figure?" "They're hunting for external access, but nobody outside could hit the central servers without triggering alerts, and none went off. That means—" He paused, narrowing his eyes. "It means whoever did this knew exactly where to strike. Someone on the inside." Michael swallowed hard. "That's serious, Bruno," the boy nodded. "I know, and nobody here sees what's right in front of them." Bruno edged toward a tech trash bin where discarded cables and internal printouts lay. Rifling through schematics, he found a fragment of printed code. Partial lines, but enough to recognize a cache overload loop, a deliberate programmed failure. He tucked the paper into his pocket, determined to uncover more. By late afternoon, Orbis's best coders were spent. Nothing would reboot. Firewalls were corrupted. No backups were reachable. The network behaved as if under siege, yet with no sign of an external breach. Nathan, conversely, grew eerily composed. Closed-door meetings with investors were scheduled. Whispers of the CEO's resignation swirled backstage, and Bruno sat in a corner of the maintenance wing, pretending to reassemble a cleaning cart beside his dad. But his restless gaze traced patterns. The server crashes always matched login times from one unregistered terminal, always the same location, the 41st floor, Nathan's floor. He needed no further proof. "Dad," he said quietly but firmly, "the guy trying to fix everything is the one who broke it." Michael stared, stunned. Bruno pressed his hand against the crumpled code fragment. His mind raced, already forging a plan. If no one else could see the truth, maybe it was time for an invisible boy to prove that intelligence isn't measured by badges, but by the courage to look beyond the obvious. The Orbis tech building felt darker than ever that night. Lights were dimmed down to essentials. Emergency teams worked in exhausting shifts. The system, still partially paralyzed, was breathing on digital life support. In the basement, Michael was finishing stacking boxes in the storage room when Bruno approached, face grave and a folded notebook tucked under his arm. "Dad, you have to believe me. What happened yesterday wasn't an accident, not an external attack. It was sabotage, from the inside." Michael sighed, worn out. He looked at his son. This was serious. "Bruno, are you sure?" "I am. I watched closely. The logs don't match an external breach, no firewall alerts, no outside anomalies. And yesterday I saw a printed snippet of the code. It was an overload loop. That doesn't happen by accident." Michael hesitated. It was hard to accept that someone inside the company, even someone high up, could have done this. But he also knew Bruno didn't speak on a whim. When he said something, he'd thought it through, rechecked it and confirmed it. The boy saw the world as a logical board. If he said it was sabotage, there were reasons. "What are you going to do?" "Observe." "That's it for now. I can't make a mistake, Dad." The next morning, Bruno did more than follow his father through the halls. He moved the cleaning cart as camouflage among the supplies, but his eyes swept the rooms like live cameras. He memorized who accessed the servers, who left restricted areas, and which times lined up with the system's intermittent failures. He began frequenting the tech floors under the guise of collecting recyclable trash. He learned where the auxiliary terminals were, which doors required manual badge scans, and which ones responded to internal commands. In the tech discard room, he found more printed code fragments. They made no sense in isolation, But Bruno recorded every line. At home, he reconstructed the digital puzzle as if he were assembling an engine out of invisible Lego pieces. Then he spotted a pattern. Among all the failure timestamps he'd noted, one identifier kept reappearing in the printed logs: 172.09.41. "It's a tag," he murmured late one night as he spread the papers across the kitchen table. Michael, watching from the doorway, asked, "What does that number mean?" Bruno turned a pencil between his fingers, thoughtful. "It's a terminal ID, and I know where it is." In the following days, Bruno intensified his silent investigation. He sketched a map of Orbis Tech with entry and exit flows for the tech suites. He discovered that terminal ZIO 172.09.41 sat in a restricted area on the 41st floor, Nathan Spencer's floor. He also noticed something else. Every time Nathan entered his office between 9 and 10 a.m., small system glitches reset parts of the network, not enough to draw attention, but consistent, controlled, as if he were fine-tuning something remotely. Bruno logged everything with mathematical precision. On Friday night, when few employees remained, Bruno got into the 41st floor tech trash bin. Pretending to look for cables for his dad, he found an envelope stuffed with torn-up papers. Among them was a spreadsheet full of code lines identical to the virus that had brought the systems down. Again, the tag Jari 172.09.41 was stamped across it. Then came another revelation. That terminal ID was linked to an internal digital identity, a user with top-level privileges, Admin KG. Bruno grasped the meaning immediately. KG, King Spencer. That night at home, Bruno laid out his notes for Michael. The evidence was beginning to take shape, fragile though it was. "This is huge, son, and dangerous. I know, but if nobody does anything, he'll erase everything and pin it on someone innocent. And you, who will protect you?" Bruno met his father's eyes with unwavering resolve, courage far beyond his 12 years. "I can't stay invisible forever, Dad. Not when the truth's right in front of me." Michael said nothing. He just hugged him tight. He knew he couldn't stop his son, only stand by him. On Saturday, Orbis ran at half capacity. The merger was officially on hold. Investors were pulling back. Andrew grew increasingly isolated. Nathan, by contrast, amassed influence. He was the only one with recovery plans. All eyes turned to him, all except Bruno's. He knew he now had to get where nobody would let him in, the server room. There lay the final pieces of the puzzle, the ultimate confirmation, and perhaps the key to saving Orbis. In his mind, the plan formed like a flawless algorithm. He would use his father's master key, granted for the nightly cleaning, to slip into the server room in the early hours of Tuesday. He'd have only minutes, but that was all he needed, because now Bruno not only suspected, he knew. And the truth lay hidden at the very core of the world's greatest tech empire. The early hours of Tuesday were silent and heavy. Manhattan slept under artificial lights, while Orbis Tech's floors lay in controlled darkness. The few overnight maintenance workers moved with the efficiency of people who preferred to go unnoticed. Amid them, Bruno slipped through like a shadow. He wore his dad's grey uniform, a baseball cap, and carried a small backpack with a flashlight, notebook, and makeshift cables. The master key rested in his inner jacket pocket, reluctantly lent by Michael after Bruno promised to be quick, quiet, and do nothing dangerous. But what he was about to do went far beyond that. The server room door clicked almost silently as it opened. Bruno slipped inside and closed it carefully behind him. The space was a technological sanctuary. Rows of servers pulsing with silent coded lights, side monitors streaming live data, screens displaying Orbis's internal network maps. Yet many readouts were locked, remnants of the virus-induced collapse. Bruno approached the central terminal. He plugged in his improvised adapter and accessed the directory panel. "Okay, let's see who really rules this place," he whispered. Typing in basic commands, he uncovered hidden directories. Many were generically named, but one caught his eye. Key R00T Access. He knew immediately what that was, the King Spencer account that had surfaced before and now was confirmed in the system. He smirked. You couldn't even bother to hide it better. He began tracing internal files, executable logs, overload commands, and what looked like the timer for a second-stage virus. The system was set to wipe out the entire database in 48 hours. If the first attack didn't finish the job, the second would destroy everything irretrievably. This wasn't just sabotage. It was extermination, he murmured, horrified. Next came the trickiest part, retrieving the virus code itself. It sat locked behind a security layer requiring direct authentication. No biometrics, just one password, one chance. Bruno stood motionless for several long seconds. He thought like Nathan, arrogant, narcissistic, convinced of his own genius. The password had to be personal. He typed Nathan 2025. Incorrect. Tried. Orbis reborn. Incorrect. He sighed, remembering the KG signature, the tone of superiority, the way Nathan talked about himself in meetings. Then he dared. King Nathan. The screen blinked. Access granted. Bruno could scarcely believe it. He wasted no time. Navigating swiftly through the code, he mapped its structure and pinpointed the critical execution routines. The system was sophisticated, but every software has vulnerabilities, and so does every ego. He located the sequence triggering the mass destruction, wrote a reversal script, simple, direct, effective, then disarmed the second-stage timer, blocked King Spencer access, and encrypted the files to prevent further tampering. Finally, he copied everything. Each line of code, every hidden email detailing the sabotage, the names of secret investors, even corporate purification plans to purge immigrant employees from Orbis Tech. When he finished, he exhaled deeply. But then a new notification flashed in the corner of the screen. Alert, external access detected, 04:17 am. The system had tracked his login. Bruno glanced around, heart pounding. He had only minutes before surveillance logs would flag this out-of-pattern access. He disconnected the adapter, wiped away visible traces, and slipped out as quietly as he had entered. In the dark corridors, distant voices echoed, guards changing shifts. He sprinted to the service exit and descended the emergency stairs. He was sweating, not from exertion, but from the weight of responsibility he now carried. Outside, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Michael waited in a blind spot behind the building, face tense, hands trembling. "Did you get it?" he asked. Bruno simply handed over the USB drive. "It's all here, and now we have to show the world." Michael pulled him into a hug, but fear shone in his eyes. His son had crossed a dangerous line. There was no turning back. Bruno looked up at the imposing Orbis Tech Tower. Inside, men like Nathan believed themselves to be gods of the future. But they'd forgotten that truth can come from the most unexpected places, and that even the most fortified code has a flaw. And now that flaw had a name: Bruno Harris. Wednesday morning began like a funeral at Orbis Tech. The lobby, once bustling, lay silent. Digital panels displayed bland messages. Faces were closed off. Executives avoided eye contact. A rumor pulsed through the air. CEO Andrew Coleman would resign today. In the 45th floor boardroom, the mood was one of siege. CTO Nathan Spencer presided over the meeting like a sinister conductor. Before him sat Orbis's veteran specialists, the legal team, and 3 board members awaiting a decision. Andrew, drained and trembling, stared at reports. "Andrew," Nathan said in a honeyed tone that felt like a blade being sharpened, "we have to think about stability. Your stepping down may be the only way to restore investor confidence. We've drafted a transition letter. You can still leave with your honor intact." Andrew hesitated. His pride waged war against the brutal numbers. No solution had materialized. According to Nathan, the second attack would strike in hours. The experts were at a loss. Then the door creaked open. Bruno strode in, determined, wearing a simple hoodie and holding a USB drive. Michael burst in behind him, out of breath. "Bruno, wait!" Security leapt forward. "Who is this kid?" one executive barked. Nathan shot to his feet, recognizing the boy. "This is preposterous! Get him out of here!" But before the guards could move, a voice cut through the tension. Zachary Armstrong, senior digital security specialist, stood. Quiet by nature but impeccable in reputation, he had been watching Bruno since he entered. "Hold on. I know this boy. He's Mr. Harris's son. I've seen him quietly around the tech floors before." Nathan exploded. "This only makes it worse. How did this child access restricted areas?" Bruno held his ground, voice steady. "Because no one saw me. That's exactly why I saw what everyone else ignored." Andrew rose slowly. "What are you talking about, son?" Bruno placed the USB drive on the table. "I'm talking about the root cause of the collapse, the real culprit, and the solution." Silence. Nathan laughed, nervous. "This is a circus, a pathetic farce. Now we're taking advice from a janitor's kid." "No," Bruno said. "You're listening to someone brave enough to look where no one else would. I broke into the server room. I deactivated both viruses. I copied the evidence. And I can prove it was you, Mr. Spencer." The room froze. Nathan's face drained of color. Bruno plugged the drive into the projector. Seconds later, the virus code appeared on the screen, its digital signatures traced to the admin KG account. Next came emails showing Nathan colluding with competitors, plans to purge immigrant employees, exact timestamps of his rogue logins. "This is fabrication, forged!" Nathan screamed, unraveling. Bruno revealed the final blow, the backdoor login using the password King Nathan. "Your vanity was your downfall." Nathan hurled a folder across the table. "You'll trust a street urchin over me? He should be sweeping floors, not hacking systems." Bruno met his rage with calm. "I learned from sweeping floors. But while you crowned yourself king, I was learning the throne." The head of security stood as Nathan lunged. "You're insane. He broke into servers. It's illegal. A conspiracy." Andrew spoke, voice firm at last. "And you sabotaged Orbis Tech, tried to destroy us all. You fueled it with hate, and you lost." Nathan, desperate, advanced on Bruno, eyes blazing. "You filthy immigrant brat! This was my company, mine!" Michael stepped between them and held him back. Security moved in to restrain Nathan as he raged. "These dirty immigrants ruined everything." Michael looked at his son. Bruno did not flinch. Andrew surveyed the stunned room. "This boy, this invisible child you all ignored, saved Orbis Tech, saved us." Silence. Then applause, first tentative, then wholehearted. Zachary led the clapping, others joined, and Michael, tears in his eyes, gripped his son's shoulder with pride. The empire had nearly fallen, but it was rescued by someone no one even saw, someone who saw farther because he stood beneath them all. Bruno Harris. The following week was all about rebuilding. Orbis Tech, one of the world's largest tech companies, had escaped collapse by mere seconds. But the impact of what had happened reverberated through the halls, not just in the servers. CEO Andrew Coleman reclaimed the helm with a new stance. The storm had exposed not only technical risks, but the human failures eating away at the company's foundation. Arrogance, discrimination, silence. And at the heart of the turnaround was the name nobody expected to hear: Bruno Harris. On Friday, an extraordinary town hall was called in Orbis's main auditorium. Over 500 employees gathered. Cameras were set up. The press was invited. On stage, Andrew Coleman spoke with steady conviction. There are times when a company must pause and ask itself, what brought us here? It isn't always innovation. It isn't always money. Sometimes it's someone everyone overlooked. He paused and scanned the crowd. When all seemed lost, it was a 12-year-old boy, the son of one of our janitors, who saved Orbis Tech. A child invisible to the seats of power, yet with the intelligence and courage few would dare. Bruno was invited up to the stage. He climbed the steps with small, hesitant strides, eyes wide at the crowd, yet unshaken. Beside him, Michael looked on with quiet pride. Andrew extended his hand. "On behalf of all of us, thank you." Bruno shook his hand, speechless. "And starting today, Bruno Harris will serve as special advisor to Orbis Tech on security, innovation and usability. He'll have access to all our research labs, dedicated mentors, and a guaranteed path, whatever career he chooses." Applause rippled through the room. Some faces glistened with tears. And that's not all. Michael Harris, a janitor for 15 years, will be promoted to General Supervisor of Technical Operations, not because of his son, but because for 15 years he's exemplified ethics, excellence and humanity. More applause. Michael joined Bruno on stage, a bit shy, and wrapped him in a tight embrace. Andrew continued. "And as of this month, we launched the Bruno Harris Program, an education fund for children of Orbis Tech employees, scholarships, courses, mentorships, because talent shouldn't wear a badge and opportunity shouldn't depend on your zip code." In the days that followed, something changed. People who'd never looked twice at Michael now greeted him warmly. Engineers who'd ignored Bruno began to listen. Books appeared on his desk. Project invitations landed in his inbox. A veteran coder asked for his help debugging an old algorithm. A security guard escorted him to the main cafeteria, a place he'd never been allowed before. But Bruno remained the same. He walked the halls with his notebook in his pocket. He watched more than he spoke. He helped his dad whenever he could. He still wore his plain grey hoodie, now clean but unassuming. The next Monday, Bruno walked into Orbis for the first time as an official employee, through the main lobby, not the service elevator, greeted with smiles, handshakes, and respect. Before stepping inside, he paused in front of the same dark screen in the storage room, where weeks earlier he'd said, "One day these machines will listen to me." He smiled. Now, they did. But more importantly, now, people did too. The school bus stopped at the corner of Bruno's humble neighborhood. Its windows were rolled down, and for the first time, several faces turned toward him with smiles. The boy climbed off in silence, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes fixed on the ground, not out of shame, but humility. When he rounded the last block before home, the sound took him by surprise. "Look, it's him, it's Bruno!" The street was decked out with makeshift banners, balloons in the colors of the Brazilian flag, and hand-lettered signs reading, "Our Hero" and "Neighborhood Pride." Bruno's mother rushed out and hugged him through tears. Neighbors gathered around, cheering, offering sweets, snacks and soda. There was even a cake with his name iced in lopsided letters. The whole community seemed to have come together to celebrate. But Bruno wanted only one thing: to get to his room, sit on the floor, open his notebook, and write. Everything he'd learned, and everything he still wanted to learn. Deep down, he knew this story was only just beginning. That night, as shy fireworks popped in the sky, Bruno climbed up to the rooftop terrace of their house. Michael followed him in silence. The city below glittered, massive, but somehow now felt more within reach. "I thought everything would end badly, son," his father said, sitting beside him. "But you held the world together at 12 years old." Bruno looked up at the stars. "It wasn't just the company, Dad. It was everything it stood for. If it had fallen, people would have blamed folks like us. They would have used it to shut doors for decades. And you opened one, Michael finished for him. Bruno nodded. Now they know. Talent wears no badge, courage knows no age, and someone who cleans the floor can see farther than those who only look down from above. In the weeks that followed, other companies began copying Orbis's model. Scholarships for employees' children, merit programs, diversity initiatives. News outlets celebrated Bruno's achievement in newspapers, tech blogs, and education magazines. The boy who saved Orbis had become a symbol of cultural change. But Bruno didn't want to be a symbol. He wanted to be an engineer. He kept studying as before, reading even more, learning from anyone willing to teach, sometimes borrowing books, other times watching tutorials on an old phone, but always with the same spark in his eyes. Once, a reporter asked what he wanted to be when he grew up. "Grow up," he replied, "but never forget who I was when no one saw me." On the last day of the semester, the school principal asked Bruno to her office. Inside, he found an envelope on her desk, bearing Orbis Tech's official seal. It was an invitation to join an advanced technology training program, a special course created in his honor, the first step of many. As he left her office, friends and teachers gathered in the hallway, offering quiet applause. There were no fireworks this time, just respect, and Bruno knew that was rarer than any award. Standing on the sidewalk beside his father, Bruno looked out at the city once more. "Dad, remember when I said one day the machines would listen to me?" "I remember," Michael said. Bruno smiled. "Now I want them to learn to listen to everyone, even those who've never had a voice." Michael pulled him into a hug. In that moment, the lesson was complete. Because the world had witnessed something simple yet powerful. Impossible is only what no one courageous enough to be seen has tried. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought about the story. See you in the next video.